often so amazed about the sorts of things that the Holy Church presents to us on these big feast days and also at other times, both from the Gospels, the Epistles, and from the readings of the lives of the holy saints, the Synaxarion, and places like this. As you know, we have just celebrated the dormition of the Mother of God, the falling asleep of the Mother of God, the one who brought forth Christ into the world. And being a perfectly human person herself, it was necessary for her also to pass from this life on earth, and enter into the heavenly realm. On account of her holiness, on account of the requests that she made to her Son, she was spared many of the strange things that souls encounter when they leave their bodies. I'm not going to go too much into that today, but it is a very, very important topic for all Orthodox Christians to be aware of. To be aware of what happens to the soul, how it is met by strange beings called angels, we hope angels. How it's shown the glory of God, not what you think, like what we see here on earth, but something infinitely greater than that. Infinitely greater. And how it needs to appear before the Lord of glory to be set, at least for a while, into a place which has been prepared for that soul, but also for which that soul has prepared itself by its life on earth, through its own free will. As you probably know, the Mother of God, having lived a life of sinlessness, was given special honours on account of that. Right now, there is, as you, I am sure, aware of, almost a madness throughout society on what we call the issues with gender. You know, from the prophecies of the Holy Fathers and from the book of the Apocalypse by St. John the Divine, that certain people in the world await the coming of a one whom they will call the Messiah, who will also show great miracles, fake ones. And be installed instead of Christ into the position of ruling this world. At the same time gathering those who wish to follow him and his ways. Some people have said that this person will be Satan incarnate. In other words, Satan taking on human flesh, just like Christ took on human flesh and became both man and God. But the Holy Church teaches us that it is impossible for him to do that. He has no power to do such a thing, to actually become incarnate. He can, in various ways, appear to be like a person, but he cannot bear that. But there is something very important that is happening right now, and I'm sorry if I speak to you again about scientific things. Because we have found some of the places in living cells, the areas which dictate how bodies or how parts of bodies will behave. Well, we believe we've found it, and a whole new science of genetics has been established on account of that, and all sorts of experiments are being done by moving around those particular elements which dictate how things occur and why they occur. There are companies who make much money from that today, mainly in the realm of crops. They fiddle with the genetic makeup of crops. It sounds simple when you say it like that, but they snip out parts which may be responsible for allowing insects to attack these crops, and snip in parts which make crops look particularly perfect in their formation. And these companies have been very successful, and most of the food that we eat is the result of that. There's nothing you can do about that. Because wherever you go, whichever food you eat, whichever place you go to buy things, unless you've grown it yourself, the chances are it's been fiddled with one way or another. What they never tell you is what are the repercussions. If you snip something out of the places where the genes are, is there a repercussion somewhere else? Indeed there is. In the case of crops, much of the food value, which we value so much for our life, disappears. It's snipped out. And therefore, people in the West in particular begin to come down with sicknesses that nobody before had ever realised and can't determine where they come from. Strange sicknesses. They don't necessarily kill a person, but they make their life quite miserable and not right in feelings, in thoughts, and in actions. In the case of human beings, our genetic makeup of male and female depends on two genes, which we call X and Y, but it could have been called anything you like. It doesn't really matter. Two X's give us what? Boy. And an X and a Y give a male. Wouldn't it be good if they could snip out the X and the Y altogether? Snip it out altogether. So there's no X and Y gene, there's no male or female gene anymore. What would be the result of that? What would be the result of that? Some sort of monster. What? If it works, and you will see it work in your time, particularly the young people, you'll see people that in some respects look human, but if you look carefully they're not, and they have no X and Y genetics in them, which basically means they're neither male nor female. Just like Satan is neither male nor female. You can see where that is leading to. You can see who is the one that will be chosen to sit on the throne to govern this world and to give to those who are chosen to bow down to this one all the glory and all the honour and all those sorts of things which they expect. And it will happen very quickly. Very quickly. That person will initially show forth some sort of behaviour which we might consider as kindness and forgiving, but very soon thereafter become a tyrant worse than any of the ones that we've seen in the past 100 years or so. Again, due to the fiddling that would have occurred in the genetic makeup of that person. In other words, he's as close as he can be to Satan without being Satan himself, because the one thing something Satan can't do is actually incarnate into a human being. But he can come as close as possible. These are the mysteries which are hidden in the Gospels, particularly towards the end, particularly in the Gospel of St. John. They're not written in a sense that it is sort of the way I explained it, that there'll be a genetic makeup and X and Y disappear and there'll be people that are going to be non-malformed. Because in those days nobody would have understood or believed that anyway. But nevertheless, that is the way it's going. One of the fiddlings of that genetic situation is that that creature has 6 fingers, 6 toes, webbed, not unusual. Stalin had the same thing. Webbed toes, one of his secrets. That's why he was rejected in the Russian army. And when they assessed him for his health, the general said, "This man has the mark of Antichrist on him." And he was rejected. And indeed, he became an Antichrist over the 20th century, if you know the story of that. So these things that I'm telling you are not fantasies, fairy tales, or made up like wishes from somebody, but things that can be done and are being done, and in their time will be revealed and will grab the earth and rule over that earth for a very short time by those also who have bowed down to this beast. We were told that our website, which carries occasional warnings about these things and a few little other stories, nothing violent, nothing to inspire people to do wrong, has been fiddled with also. What's it called? Hacked, or things removed, or things not getting through. In other words, there is already a systematic installation in the world which is growing more powerful and more able to root out any information about the coming of this new ruler of the world, the one who's going to stand instead of Christ, the Antichrist. I haven't said much about that for many, many weeks, but I'm telling you because of the huge, huge progress that's has been made in the past year in the science of genetics. It is just amazing the sort of things that they've done and are able to do by fiddling with those chemical entities. And as usual, they can only be done with living things. You cannot make anything alive that's not already alive, no matter how many chemicals you mix, the same ones, no matter how many ways, you will not make life. So the life has to come from a life, and that life is fiddled with. Before Perestroika in Russia, there was talk, let's say anecdotal, maybe it was true, maybe it wasn't, that there were whole villages in hidden parts of Russia, and it's not hard to hide in Russia, where the citizens of those villages were genetically made somehow. What they looked like, we don't know. How they behave, we don't know. Occasionally you get these photographs of creatures in various pages where they want to sensationalize something. But it appears that during that period, the science of genetics had progressed much more rapidly than it had in those places where it was told to us and explained to us. Most of the time, it's used to prove evolution. Most of the time. It's used to, the scenario is like this. Very occasionally, something goes wrong with a gene, that is with a part in a body which is responsible for making something in that body. And occasionally, that thing that goes wrong is a good thing. And it is able to be passed on to the next generation, and the next, and the next, and the next. And thus evolves a new species, different to the previous one, unable to breed with the previous one because it is now a new species. That's the argument that's used. And that was one of the reasons why in the USSR at that time they were doing some of these experiments upon people. Not just people, but crops as well, which led to massive starvation for many, many years throughout some of the most fertile land in the world. They believed some particular professor, forgot his name now. Yeah. Who said that if you plant in this way and do things in this way, your crop will increase tenfold or whatever, and not only that, you'll be able to have 2 or 3 crops per year. And the result was mass starvation. So, all sorts of things are possible with the fiddling of life. defection occurs in the genes. What do they call it? The body, that is, eliminates it. It eliminates it so that it no longer can be passed on to the next generation. Except for a few small number of ones, like for example the genetic sickness of haemophilia, which inflicted the royal houses of Europe, where there was a gene that affected boys only that would not cause bleeding to stop. And we know a friend also who has something like that. Ephthalemia, I think it's called, which is also a bad mutation, because all mutations are bad. There are millions of mutations, and thank the Lord that they are nearly all eliminated at their appearance and do not manifest themselves as the final being or the final creature. But by interfering in there, which is now no longer nature, but interference with a mind of somebody, you create monsters using those sorts of techniques. And there isn't right now this process of creating this monster in the image and likeness of Satan, who is going to rule the world. And Orthodox Christians, those who struggle, those who understand spiritual life, those who are fed with Holy Communion, and do the works which are set out for them to do, will recognize this monster. Others will follow him. Just as now they follow monsters, they do, and make them into celebrities. You can go into most big shops now, Target or whatever, and they will have huge sections set out for you to dress up as a monster, so that on November someday you can go around and scare others. It's all preparation, this whole thing. Yourself, you know not to get involved with it. You need to teach and show your children over and over and over again how wrong this all is, because they're going to be in the midst of it at school in their secret meetings, and the teachers who will tell them that there are good mutations and we're just waiting for the right one to pop up so that we can grow an eye in the back of our head, and therefore you won't have to have rear view mirrors anymore when you park the car, and all such things as that. Good mutations, you know? You will recognise this one if you do those things that are bound up with struggle. And if you don't, the only other choice is to be a servant to that creature. spiritual death. May the Lord help us in these times. You have to know about it. You have to pass it on. It's getting more and more complicated. And a lot of the trouble that we're having in the world today with this massive movement of people and migrants and all this is all part of it as well. Because people can't find food. Because food is not being able to be grown where it should grow, because it's been fiddled with. The food that used to grow there is not available, so they get the food that you buy from a company that's fiddled with and it won't grow. So your only alternative is to pack up and go. Where do you go? That's the problem. And when you do go, you take everything with you, including your heresies and your myths. And when the good countries that take you in establish you, you can then promote those heresies and myths throughout the rest of society and make that society part of those who will bow down before this monster that will appear to them. Because monsters are part and parcels of many of these heresies. Like I said to you, if you drive down Springvale Road, you'll see the street every now and then has spaces full of monsters. And people, white people, Western people, go there on Sunday mornings and pick the Buddha or whatever that they want to put in their front yard. Maybe to make a fountain, you know, with water spurting out or something. Yes, it's to us funny because we see the stupidity of it all. Trouble is, they're going to be in charge. May God help us that we can somehow go through that labyrinth that they have set up for us, because the Lord always gives us a way out. And we can find a way out. And not only that, but learn ways to serve Him and be fruitful before the Lord.
Let us all say